It's my great pleasure on behalf of the Consortium for Sustainable Urbanization to welcome you all, those here in the room, those remote, to the monthly program called Green Cities, which, as I was describing a moment ago before we started, initiated at the Consortium for Sustainable Urbanization during the pandemic almost 3 years ago, to bring to the table exemplary projects and policies and programs that related to how initiatives in different cities around the world could be shared when people weren't traveling, when people weren't getting together at conferences. So the Consortium for Sustainable Urbanization, as I think most, if not everybody on the Zoom call knows already, is a not-for-profit based in New York, but acting globally in concert with a host of other organizations and co-sponsors of this event, but particularly with UN Habitat. The consortium was created to bring the diplomatic community in New York and the design community together, talk about policies, programs, projects, but particularly the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. And these talks have ranged from South Africa to Lima, Peru, cities in all continents. And we're delighted to have with us as our speaker today, Clara Cime, who is a co-founder of the collaborative architectural practice called Grand Huit. And it would be much easier to read the bio and the dust jacket of the book about the project we'll be hearing in French, but I won't. It says that, Clara, you're engaged in the creation of places and of a ecological and fashion of living marked by solidarity and working with local actors and with local materials in creating spaces and locations and possibilities that wouldn't have otherwise existed. Grand Huit is located in the 19th arrondissement, a popular district in Paris, and the project that, or projects perhaps, that we'll be hearing about today are located in that same district, same neighborhood, within walking distance. And I won't ask questions in advance, but I'll be very much interested in the attendant issues, not only of 15-minute city, but of working with people who are your neighbors. But we have people in the room, critical mass, and some students who are early for a class at Columbia. I'd like to get started without further ado, and Clara, give you the floor, start screen sharing, and I'll turn off my microphone and camera if need be. I will only intervene, to help if there's a technical word or expression that needs translation. But there are two people around the table who speak French as natives, who much better than I do, and down. So please, Clara, the floor is yours.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and I'm very, very glad to be with you today. Let me start by thanking you for having me. Thank you, Rick, for this very kind invitation. It's a real pleasure. And also to have the opportunity to share our experience and practice. First of all, let me introduce this practice. It is marked over 25 years by ecological commitment. As Rick said it to you, co-founded the Grand Huit Cooperative in 2018. This studio brings architects, landscape designers, but also urban philosophers together. And our practice is strongly rooted in the less affluent districts of Eastern Paris, one of which has also been my home for the last 25 years. And with local resources collected locally and cooperations with the inhabitants and the economic actors of ecological transition, we try to reimagine places where populations and programs can coexist. We developed social housing, craftsmanship workshops, urban agriculture sites, and cultural centers, in places where other ways of living can be invented. Our approach to eco-design is intimately linked to a reflection on the social and political issues. And I strongly believe the architect practice must become carbon efficient, of course, but that alone cannot meet the issues we face now. Care for territories, their inhabitants, and the local ecosystem of professionals have been at the heart of our commitment. We have been concerned with issues of segregation within our metropolises. We are convinced that domination of nature is inseparable from domination of humans over humans. We have therefore contributed to the creation of alternative models of living, alternative models of work and social organization through co-design with the users of our projects. Models that are more inclusive, models that take care of the environment. We have developed our practice around the reinvention of traditional techniques, bio, geo, and reuse sourced materials, and more generally, local short circuits. The urgent need for architects to move towards more conservation led us to carry out action research on the material history and techniques of existing buildings. I would place our work at the intersection of the circular economy and the solidarity-based economy, which for me are two sides of the same coins. This is the starting point of our practice, and now let me illustrate it with two projects located in Paris in this neighborhood. I will first show you the eco-design of an urban and inclusive farm, and after that I will present the transformation of a former administrative building into Paris, demonstrator place for solidarity and innovative initiative. The first project I would like to present is a collective lived experience, a 6 years life project, the Ferme du Rail, which has been open to the public since 2019, but has been in development since 2014. It is a neighborhood solidarity location where market gardening techniques are employed to valorize the collected organic waste. This project offers an urban agriculture model which has its roots in the local ecosystem. This was launched in response to a call of projects by the city of Paris. The city proposed to multidisciplinary teams to develop 20 patches of land she owned in an innovative way. This call of project was called Réinventer Paris. It was the first edition of this type of competition, which has become more commonplace today all over the world. And to set up this project, we mobilized a local ecosystem of professionals and inhabitants so that they become the actors of the sustainable and social transition. Located on the edge of the Petite Ceinture, an obsolete railway track that encloses Paris, this offers 5 students and 15 persons in need accommodation, mostly homeless people. A public open, but there is also a public open restaurant and agricultural work locations such as the productive greenhouse, mushroom growing cave, and everything everywhere permaculture gardens, including facades, balconies, and rooftops. 2 buildings opened their arms to the visitor and set up around a large inner city productive market garden. Beyond this central garden, there is the first building, which is a 3-story timber block, housing for the garden's urban farmers. And to its left, the second building begins with ground floor bicycle garage and garden maintenance machinery storage. On the floor above, the restaurant and its terrace. They are linked to the former railway, which is today a promenade. And at the top level of this building, there is the greenhouse. The buildings and the gardens are the eco-design fruits, shared governance between a large consortium of stakeholders, operators, architects, landscapers, and project managers, social employment enterprise, housing associations, etc., etc., tasked with creating job and supporting inclusion. The social employment enterprise, the social agency stakeholders introduced and support the homeless involved, both before and once they eventually move into the housing block during the 5 years of its development. An active neighborhood consultation was organized that allows complete residents' integration into the adventure. During all the design and construction period, the 3 pillars of sustainable development were aimed: ecology, economy, and social. This urban farm responds to the urgent desire for nature in the city and the relocation of our food production. At the same time, it allows a community of 15 people in integration and 5 students to find housing, training, and work in ecological jobs in dignified conditions. The collected organic waste is employed to restore polluted soil to allow market gardening production. And to close the loop and complete the anchoring of the local ecosystem, the restaurants partially supplied by the gardens. This place, the restaurant, is also the canteen for the people who live and work here, but it is open to the public at large also. This is the first urban farm in Paris, but more than this, it is part of the local social fabric by generating agricultural services, by creating jobs, and by offering an open to all conviviality and sharing place. Buildings were designed and as eco materials implement learning ground, mainly wooden structure and straw insulation. The construction time was an opportunity to extend the project's educational and social vocation by training people experiencing exclusion. It featured the inclusion of contractors using local biosourced materials to be coherent with our farming activity. For example, we used bundles of straw not only to be the first building using this low carbon material in Paris, but because they are thermally very efficient. You can see the truck on the former railway bringing the bundles on the construction site. But also because it is adapted to, this technique is adapted to our low-skilled workforce. And since also there is a lot of it in the surrounding Paris, we are convinced that our metropolises has lost the links that connected them to their countryside. Collecting the material directly from the farmer's field, paying him an income without any intermediary, is also a commitment to rebuild the farm metabolism, the urban, metabolism, and to recreate territorial solidarity. We are living in a parenthesis, I think, of history during which this type of link, this circular economy, has broken down. Working on their restoration is also anchoring our relationship to heritage. The circular economy was also illustrated. You can see the soils, the way we founded it when at the beginning of the project, really polluted. There were former wide garage that were here before we developed the project, with a lot of hydrocarbon into the soil that we had to intervene on. This circular economy was also developed, illustrated by the reused materials through many experimentations, such as recycled textile insulation, reclaimed bathroom tiles, obsolete stone walls in the garden. There were also wooden window frames transformed into planters, a bucket floor here, or this is a textile work, or here you can see the planters made with the wooden window frames. The keywords here are frugality, low-tech devices, but also robustness due to the collective and social purpose of the place. I will now show you the gardens. This is the view on the former way. This is the garden. The greenhouse, it's a cold one, a non-heating one. And this is the rooftop with the tomatoes. As you can see, we are in the middle of the city. The flower markets, the collective kitchen, student rooms, and this very hard time of COVID containment. And of course, it's a nice place for the local meeting of the large diversity of association we have in the neighborhood. Very active. And I will continue that the current push for more sobriety reinterprets our intervention on the existing and invites us to conservation more than ever. We have to learn to open a critical dialogue with our heritage. I mentioned the action research I'm running on shared living and working spaces. These experiments in hybridations of functions place the subject of the commons at the forefront. This sharing strategy brings social intensity, preserves resources, and leads to more frugal architecture. I've often observed in the field the agility and the creativity of the inhabitants in adapting their heritage to major changes. We are called to reevaluate the way this system metabolized its resources and to find our way out to the current prevalent linear process of extracting, consuming, and throwing away. And in my opinion, the best way to decarbonize our practices is by restoring local channels. The architect is led to move towards more conservation, as I say, of the existing. To me, this conservation must be coupled with the restoration of local knowledge, craft skills, and techniques. They have often been disrupted during the Anthropocene, yet in our context, they find a new relevance. They are practically valuable in a local circular economy. Let me now illustrate my points with a pilot project that we carried out in Eastern Paris also, the same neighborhood. Most of our projects are in this neighborhood. You can see some on this map. This is a large-scale restoration project with a high design expectation. Our own schedule of condition was first, not to consume new materials, second, collect second life materials and mobilize an ecosystem and craft people within a 30-kilometer radius. This was the game. For this restoration, we set up a cohesive team of local integration contractors and craftsmen to gather together the materials to be reused. As the reuse approach connected us strongly to the material, we felt the need to rethink our working methods and roles. We, architects and craftsmen, choose the materials and design the build work together, like William Morris in the past. I believe that from these reconnections between craftsmen, architects, engineers, and materials, an aesthetic of our time is being born. The project was a command of the Ville de Paris, City of Paris. They carried the projects really strongly. They really wanted a strong involvement into circular economy, into this project. They really wanted a demonstrator on this question. So the political commitment is really important in this experience. And this is what this project was designed as a learning ground, and we valued vernacular techniques that many volunteers and trainees came to try out. We carry out more than 40 experiments, such as metal frame for the terrace, and but also dry stone technique coming from obsolete public space pavement, or for, you can see we try many techniques for soils and walls outside. We wanted the aesthetic of Paris, which is really important to be integrated into it. this is the public's. We also try former concrete slab, not recycled one, but reused one, sworn to make a pavement inside. A recycled textile transformed in modular partition wall and in insulation also. Or balloon clothes to create sun protection, or former insulate papers to create seals and lights. This is also the sun protection on the facade with the balloon, etc., etc. This is the wooden window and door frames transformed into tray for the terrace to separate the terrace and the docks, but also to make parquet floor. Parquet floor also on the terrace. As you can see, this project has been a real territorial laboratory. This is another way. I would say that I claim for reconnection to traditional techniques, as I told you, but also I'm convinced that the adaptation of existing buildings to energy efficiency and thermal comfort requires technical innovation. At the moment, research on these subjects is too embryonic. My main technical resource on these subjects comes from the practice of historical monuments. This methodology, focusing on the know-how and the material rather than on the products, is in perfect synergy with the use of organic and geosourced materials. And to conclude this speech and to answer to your question, if you have any, I would say that through all these experimentations, I developed a specific approach to what I called an architecture of relationship. To me, it's not only about producing architectural objects as ecologically efficient as they may be, but it is above all about experimenting with others, more open design build. I'm convinced that the Anthropocene, marked by global urbanization, profoundly reshapes the definition and social role of the architects. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. That was an amazing presentation, half an hour that covered so many different bases. Both projects bring together, I'd say, 4 distinct strands, which you outlined in no particular order, but perhaps in order based on process. The idea of local solidarity, local actors, community engagement from the outset. The idea of reintegrating nature and at least at the Ferme du Rail, the idea of urban agriculture as the new normal. The idea of material regeneration, as you described it, a circular economy that talks about not just the materials, but the techniques. And you mentioned action research, which is, I'd like to think, a hallmark of the group here at Columbia in CBIPS, where we're meeting right now, where there's a laboratory on building techniques leading to technical innovation, but mindful of traditional know-how. Those 4 strands are wonderfully coincident in both of these projects, and I could imagine sometimes difficult to balance, particularly if skill sets, craft skill sets need to be, your word, regenerated, but maybe relearned. You know, I remember one collaboration here in New York between Carpenters Union and the local architectural center on trying to bring together people who were speaking different languages, were talking past each other, architects who didn't really understand material installation needs, union carpenters who didn't understand why things were being designed the way they were. My first question is about that dialogue. As an activist, as well as an architect, how do you start in bringing people together in the neighborhood about a project such as the Ferme du Rail? It's a government impetus, but it's a really community-generated project. You're in and of the community. What's the starting point? How do you conceptualize the mix of uses and the nature of the project? Where do you start?
It's not obvious, your question, because it's very natural. As I told you, I live here, my children were raised here, and I'm really involved into the local economy also. So this deep interdependence between all these words is really, this is my roots actually to initiate this kind of project, because there is also this hybridization into the large diversity of public. There is always at the center of the preoccupation of the stakeholders, the idea that we have to take care of the less affluent people around us. This is what we have to do. We are living in two metropolises, and this is if we have the luck to have enough for every day, we have to take care of them. This is the starting point most of the time, but concerning the building process and the local economy, we try to mobilize. I would say that the beginning, we start from a need. There is a need of an organization that comes to us. We are local architects. They come to us. We can observe the very tiny signs, tiny, je sais pas comment on dit signe, tiny call that that most of the time are under the view, and we are, because we live here, because we work here, we are able to catch this latent signs that actually talk about the real need of the neighborhood.
No, that came very clearly in presentation of both projects. I think your very first slide, or one of the first slides, had the word hyper local with an exclamation point after it. And the knowledge of the community, being part of the community, has to have made an incredibly big difference. The projects, though, to my mind, are replicable in other cities, perhaps in other parts of Paris. But not necessarily by your firm, if I understand the methodology correctly. The idea that the first urban farm, maybe not first ever, one could go back a few centuries, but the first urban farm in memory is at the Ferme du Rail, is a game changer for other places, not just shrinking cities with much vacant land, but cities that are quite dense, that can find sites for uses that might not have been countenanced a generation ago or a decade ago even. All that to say, what is intriguing about the farm for me is its scale. it looks both in terms of the interior space in the greenhouse, the rooftop agriculture, and certainly the exterior garden itself, to be producing a significant amount of vegetables, of produce for local consumption. How much of that remains on site for the residents of the housing or for the use in the restaurant, public restaurant on the site? How much of it goes to other parts of the community? What's the scale of the agricultural effort in regard to?
To give you an indication on this, on the scales, the patch of land is very small. It's 1,300 square meters, so it's a tiny one. And his purpose is, first of all, not to produce. We don't produce so much. We produce about 40% of what you have in the plates of in the restaurant, and which is not so bad. But of course, we don't produce any proteins. So the restaurant has other productions in a more regional, in a larger neighborhood, of course. The first purpose of the place is to eat the organic waste that we collect all around the restaurant. We collect 30 restaurants around, and we need it because it's a service, because when we do that, we don't, there is no truck that come into the city, took the organic waste, put it into a fabric, and you know, it's a proposition to deal with that material into the city, and to do it with to give a path of integration for people in need, and to do it to produce substrates for a place that is polluted. So we need to create je sais pas comment on dit, excusez-moi, healthy soils, healthy substrates to produce vegetables on it. And so we need to create it completely. So organic waste, the collect and the production of compost is a way to product this healthy soils. So as you can see, this is, we can talk about this farm on this only, with this only purpose, if we want, to deal with the organic waste that is locally produced.
You know, I'm sorry. I was going to ask a corollary question, though, that relates to the people who are living there and the farming activity and also the work in the restaurant. I think I read in the book, or maybe heard from others, that part of the goal of the restaurant was to create opportunities for employment, not just waiting table, but developing vocational skills, both on the farm and in the restaurant, for people who are in transition, the regenerating of lives through creating different skill sets. And I could see that as well with the reuse of materials, as you elaborated upon, seeing people from the community working, you know, both with stone and with wood frame windows.
Yeah.
But how does the farm and the restaurant work in relation to the housing itself? Does it create employment opportunities as was intended still, or was that part of the original intent that may have changed over time?
Do you mean the restaurant create jobs? This is your question.
Yeah.
As the restaurant creates job. No, the rest, well, yes, of course, because the place is a little bit hidden into the city, because you have to go through the railway. It's a bit hidden, and we didn't know if the restaurant will have success, and it's a great success actually, because this is a place where where of nature, and we don't have many in Paris. So there is a lot of young people employed into this restaurant, but the restaurant is the plain restaurant, a normal kind of normal, and there is no intention of integration into the jobs of the restaurant. The stakeholders didn't want all the place to have this social purpose. They wanted the restaurant to be not to have this vocation, but the job to integrate people is into the gardens, into the market gardening, and also to compost, which is a technique that you have to be trained for, that you have to learn the techniques. And this is more in that kind. But the company that employed these people also have a building department. I often work with them. We did actually this kind of implements. The dry stone technique were made with this company, the company of the Ferme du Rail. We did all these works together.
Looking at the materials prompts a question for me, but I'll defer to one of the questions in the chat room from Nick Hamilton, who's the president-elect of the CSU. I'm counting the days, Nick, until you take the reins. But the question posed, I'll just read. The upcycling and reuse of the materials is fantastic, well done. Were there processes in place to turn the concrete into reusable building materials? Can you speak more to the challenges of the material reuse in the project and how you overcame those challenges?
Which one in particular?
I think in particular about the stonework, the concrete work, the reuse.
The concrete, yeah.
I would ask the same in regard to the wood frame windows that you mentioned, a skill set of rehabilitation that may not.
It's about this is actually, this is former slum that came from deconstruction sites to create the Grand Paris, Great Paris Metro subway at the Porte Maillot. And we reuse this slum by throwing it. It's this technique. We found the knowledge and the craftsmen we founded to do this are those who transform the marble, the stones of marble. They have the machine to do that. So it's the same machine we use to create this dalle. Excusez-moi, je vais juste. I'm sorry, I need vocabulary to describe. If you ask me for details on this pavement inside, we had this parquet floor that was damaged at the center, and it's a room a dining room for the employees of the place, and we wanted to create that stone carpet at the center of this room. This is why we use this this dial of this concrete slab to create it. We use it just like ties.
Another question from the chat room is from Yasmin Hébert, who's the head of Creative Exchange Lab, one of the co-sponsoring organizations of this talk program. Yasmin is asking, I'll abbreviate the question, can you share the greatest challenge on this project or both projects? Funding, the time it took, what are the lessons that are applicable from one project to another? But what was the most difficult? What challenge did you overcome?
Oh, the time, of course. It's the channels, the organization of this economy is very embryonic. So you have to deal with, for instance, on this project, La Maison des Canaux, we had 43. It's very small project. It's 800 square meters, and we had 43 interlocutors to deal with on this one, including all the actors. But you can imagine that it was a lot of because if you go back to the material that way, you have to talk with everybody. You have to talk with those who transport the material, the way they transport it, the way it came from, the material deposit, where you found it, etc., etc. And logistic issues also, which are very an obstacle that you often meet in that practice.
As a follow-up to the earlier question, again from a member of the remote audience, Ivan Badirov is asking, well, first he starts with the compliment, great architectural practice. Thank you for the presentation. He asks he says that you've mentioned that it was the city of Paris through Paris, of course, that requested the use of the site and projects such as this, although I remember from the early days of Paris, they weren't so specific as to uses. They were looking not at highest rate of return, they were looking at social benefits to the community and ideas that were generated from members of the community. That was the idea of the competition. But he's asking, apart from the generative impetus of Paris, haven't you had to promote the methods and combinations and ideas yourselves as Grand 8 in collaboration with others, and others in the neighborhood? How much of it was because of the competition and the impetus, and how much has the project's success been a function of your initiatives as activists and architects in the neighborhood? Could it have happened otherwise, without? Let me combine that with one of my questions. I look very closely at the manifesto of Grand 8 that talks about the connectiveness and the local impetus and the working in place. Can you talk a little bit about the politics of the success of the project? If that's not too broad a question. Could this have happened in a different arrondissement as easily? Could it have happened without perhaps the attention on the Petite Ceinture or the availability of the site?
There were, as I told you, there were 20 places proposed, and today this one was one of the littlest one, but this project was one of the more modest one of the whole competition, but we succeed in building it in 5 years, and to imagine it and study for the plans and all this, and building it in 5 years. the other projects weren't actually able to produce. And I think there is 2, maybe 3 buildings that came to an end. So it's, for me, we are very proud because we are a very small team with small tools, with small resources, and we succeeded in putting it at the end. And we are very proud of it. And this is also a way to demonstrate that it is possible, because we had this very strong roots in the field, in the neighborhood, and we were based on real people really involved in the local economy. And this is why I think the project was secure, was able to be developed that way, and to keep on 5 years later.
Around the table, there may be a question or two. Jesse, you were saying that you had something.
I do have a question about just to go back to the social aspects of the Ferme du Rail. How do you find the inhabitants who, work the farms? Like, do people come to you asking to live on the farm, or do you go and find people to work on the farm yourself?
It depends on which skills we were looking for. At the beginning, we create the beginning of the program, the social housing, social work on the side, with a friend, actually, which is named Yves Renaud, which was the director of the company, a social company. And they used to have places to house for housing, for social housing, emergency housing. They used to have place for working, but they wanted a place that can combine the two ways to accompany people. So this is the beginning of the reflection we had. But for the gardening, we didn't have any skills in the neighborhood, so we looked for the best one into the city of Paris, and we proposed them to imagine the gardens with us. And this kind of skills, we had to found it, and to looking for it, and to bring them into the project.
I want to come back to
answer your question.
Yeah.
Other questions around the table? Let's say 1 or 2 more. Discussing a lot about circular economy, which is completely understandable through the slides. I don't know if we still need the screen sharing, but the slides that use the materials that, whether they came from the Grand Paris projects of the Société de Grand Paris, or locally from other sites, it's very easy to have an understanding palpably of material reuse. When you try to expand from a particular project to a government policy that pertains to many projects, do you see that some of the research components of the projects that you're working on, these two and others, are being picked up by large municipal or national agencies, or even developers? I guess the question is, does the circular economy have a lot of different ripples in a pond, or does it expand conceptually to the pond itself? what is the scale of economic intervention that values reuse of materials and recycling of buildings and not putting demolition waste into a landfill? Is Paris a test case of that in general, or are these projects the leading wedge in that fight to reposition an idea that everything new is good and everything old is discarded?
As I told you, it's a demonstrator. Unfortunately, the practice is not that extent, and in the best situation, we have 1% of reused material, because I don't know if it's clear, but for us, when we talk about circular economy, we don't talk about recycling materials. Which is a totally different practice, mostly coming, we need it actually, but we're not interested in that practice because there is no way to involve local contractors and craftsmen into this recycled process. So we prefer to work on reused materials because it's more efficient on regarding to the carbon footprint, and this is what we are interested in. But in the best situation, we have 1% of the whole construction that's of reused material into in this one we have 35% of reused material. We try to push at the maximum because we had the city that asked us to do this also. You need to be supported to go so far into the experimentation. You need to be supported by your client, of course, and this is, of course, very important. The other way we succeeded in developing this practice is also to all the time put a training program on the work sites. Training, of course, you talked about it, is a very backbone of these new practices that we need to develop, and this is why with the city of Paris and some of the other organization, we developed this specific program that is called Chemin du Bâtiment Circulaire. It's Path of the Circular Buildings, to sensibilize all the stakeholders, all the actors of architecture. We wanted I'm sorry, I missed the word.
I'm going to interrupt in any cases. We're running out of time to thank you, Claire, for great presentation.
Okay.
A lot of good comments in the chat room and on my phone. I'd like to, in closing, thank not only you personally, but everyone on your team who made this project possible, and the people in the neighborhood who contributed both their labor and ideas in making it happen. I'd also like to thank the co-sponsors of this program, too many to take time to mention, but one in particular, the NGO Committee on Sustainable Development in New York, is having a very interesting upcoming program later this month called Better City, Better Life, Financing Sustainable Urban Initiatives, taking place on Halloween of all days from 1 to 3:30 p.m. And you could find more information from Margot Lazaro or the NGO committee website. The next Green Cities program a month from now is on Wednesday, November 15th. Programs will continue. For people who are looking for more information about the Consortium for Sustainable Urbanization, our wonderfully redesigned website has all of that. CSU.global. With that, I'd just like to give a big thank you to everyone who made this event, this program today possible. So thank you, Clara, and I hope to return and see how the farm, the restaurant, the housing all come together on the Pete Center. It's astounding and exemplary. Thank you again. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for taking your time.
Bye.